Welcome to The Third Chair, a show about real people, real stories, real life. And here are your hosts for The Third Chair, Peter Grigg and Doug Bazeski.
Hi, you've probably noticed that I have a haircut.
Oh, I thought it was your shirt. That was different. I'm glad you told me.
Yes, and I want to explain two things about that haircut.
Why it's so short, I hope.
Well, I went to a female Spanish speaker barber because she was the only one open in town and was too prideful to use a translator. And so I told her, take a little off the top, but apparently my Spanish is not so good because I think she heard, give him a shave and make it short.
I think your Spanish teacher, whoever that was probably easy on the curve because now you're paying the consequences.
I think so. And so the other thing I wanted to mention is that you may see one episode with me with long hair and the following week short hair and the week after that long hair. And the reason that happens is the episodes are not uploaded in the order that they're filmed. The full editing and post-production process can take different lengths of time for different episodes because we put in something called B-roll, which is like pictures and short videos. And so it really depends on when our director-producer can get the materials and then edit them. And so that's why you may see very erratic hair length and growth.
Oh, I thought it was just on the whims of our director-producer, so I'm glad you explained this to me. I was just blaming him.
Well, there's a coin toss involved in what he does every morning. Anyways, I met or helped move out our guest tonight from San Diego to his new home in Colorado Springs and saw that he had a 4-foot Braveheart sword. And as he rolled into town, he got it out as he fled the West Coast, and he said, "Freedom!"
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
Well, he really didn't do that, but I thought that was a good story. So let's talk about our next guest. He's received a Bachelor of Science in Religion and a Master's in Divinity. He spent 10 years in the Navy and helps people as an ordained deacon and a part-time hospice chaplain and in a variety of organizations helping others get the spiritual and practical care they need. He's soon to be ordained as an Anglican priest and hopefully as an Army chaplain. Please welcome Jeremy Spain.
Jeremy Spain.
Jeremy Spain, thank you for joining us. I know that you were a Navy man. When did you join the Navy?
Yeah. Just to say, too, my pleasure to be here, Peter and Doug.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me to be on the show.
We're glad to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so when I joined the Navy, that was back in 2001, August of 2001, right before September 11th. So, again, I was a month into boot camp when September 11th hit, and we thought it was really just like a psychological thing, like they were playing games with our minds, oh, this can't be real, like somebody would not fly a plane into the World Trade Centers, right? Because we didn't get to see videos of it, we didn't get to see the newspapers.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that sounds like it was a pretty profound time. You'd done like a year of college before you joined the Navy, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I did a year of college at the University of South Dakota, joined a fraternity. I did that thing for a year and just kind of got bored with that. And
was that a productive time for you in your life?
Productive in drinking.
Yeah.
Partying, it wasn't very productive in getting good grades and knowing what direction I wanted to go. But yeah, I joined the Navy because I had met my cousin. Me and him had started hanging out that summer a lot. I didn't meet him, but we just started hanging out a lot. And he was going into the Army, and I was in JROTC in high school. And I'm like, oh man, I really started thinking again about joining the military, and I wanted to serve my country. Come from a family that has served their country, and so and I wanted to see the world. South Dakota. I mean. Not much there.
Isn't Mount Rushmore in South
That's
Dakota?
the only thing there. Mount Rushmore and corn.
Corn.
The Black Hills.
The Black Hills. I mean, nothing compares to the Black Hills. But I wanted to see the world. So that's one of the reasons I joined the Navy, was so I could go out and see the various countries and
was there ever a sense at the time of, man, my life isn't going so well, maybe I ought to see if the military can give me structure? Did you have any thoughts like that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I had any structure. It was really just selfish. Like, I want to see the world. I want to go to Japan. I want to hit up these different ports in different places. Go to Australia.
Sure.
Things like that, but not really structure. No,
So,
I didn't seek the structure.
Was
so much.
was there ever a time like you were facing a judge in a criminal court case where you're saying, young man, you can go to jail or the Navy?
Nope. No.
Nothing like that?
Nothing like that. No, I didn't get in trouble really as a kid.
No, I guess I haven't done that since Vietnam. Yeah. So, what did you do in the Navy? What was your, what's the right word? The school you attend, or to train for a certain job? What?
Yeah. So my title in the military was called a Master at Arms. So I was a master at arms. I could handle any kind of arms. Not really, but that's what our title was. And that actual title goes all the way back to the early times in the Navy too. You can find Master at Arms being on ships that they maintain order and discipline amongst the sailors.
Would you be considered the person that, if someone had a question about how to use a small handheld weapon, that you'd be expected to know and answer that?
Well, you would be expected to know and answer how to use a small arms weapon, and but you would have to have specialized training also to be an instructor for that. So you'd have to go on and get further training to do that. But yeah, you would know how to shoot a 9mm. You would know how to shoot a Mossberg 500, which is a shotgun. Yeah. You'd be expected to know how to shoot an M16 or an M4.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get to shoot a javelin missile or a surface-to-air missile of any kind?
M60 machine gun. I've gotten to shoot an M60 machine gun and a 50 cal, I believe. So
wow.
But no, nothing. And 50 cals are pretty big. They got pretty big bullets.
Yeah,
so.
Boy. For sure. And then, so Masters at Arms, now, how is that related to the idea of military police in the Navy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's military police. It's MPs. It's we just call them Master at Arms. I went through a military police school. Again, this was right after September 11th. So my school, which should have been down in Lackland Air Force Base, actually they started up a new school just to handle the influx of MAs that were going through the training because of September 11th. They needed to create some other schools to get them trained and get them out into the fleet as quick as possible. So mine was at Little Creek, Virginia. It was about a month long. Really, I think some police academies are 9 months, a year long. You really need that kind of time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really get to learn a lot in a month to go out and do law enforcement. But,
yeah.
The other side of that is it's not just law enforcement. Some of it is force protection. So
what does that mean?
You're sitting on a gate protecting, checking IDs, making sure no unauthorized visitors join. You're patrolling the perimeter, making sure that, that the fence line is secure. My first duty station was in Okinawa, Japan. And for my first 2 years, I was a coxswain, which is they are a captain of a small boat, essentially, right? So I had a 2-man crew.
Oh, is that the same as the guy that shouts the commands when on the rowing teams in college?
It could be. Yeah, I don't know if that's what they call him, a coxswain, but so I spent time doing a lot of that. So harbor security is what I did my first 3 years in.
Do you think that military police eat as many donuts as the civilian police force?
No.
Probably not. Do you ever make any arrests?
I never did. Nope, I never had to make any arrest. There were some times on when I was in Okinawa, nothing really. There was a few times where we'd have ships that would pull in, and sailors would go out and they would drink, because that's what sailors do, and then they would come back and act all belligerent, and just you kind of have to say, hey, wise up, or else I'm going to have to.
Put you in the drunk tank or whatever.
Put you in the drunk tank, right? But most of the time they were all pretty good. And even when I was on board the ship, the USS Nimitz, you'd have Liberty lines. Like if you pull into Hong Kong, you might be in the bay, so you'd have to take these boats in and come back. Well, the lines were super long, and so people drunk standing in these lines, and just getting bored can be a little.
Did you go around the Mediterranean? What kinds of places do you go?
Never around the Mediterranean, no. So I was what was called a West Coast sailor, and that's just I was stationed in San Diego while I was on a ship, and so we got to visit India and Australia, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Hawaii.
Did you get to Japan?
I didn't get to Japan on a ship, but like I said, I was stationed there in my first 3 years in Okinawa. So
you never made it to Tokyo, or
I flew through Tokyo, but I never got to go out and visit the sites, and that's one of the things that actually I kind of regret with not being in, with living in Japan, not ever really taking the time to go see Tokyo. And made good money then, but I spent a lot of it on drinking and partying and stuff like that. So
I was going to say, what did you guys, certainly the stereotype is sailors going into port, drinking heavily, chasing women. Is that stereotype based on fact, or did that happen a lot?
I would say that happened a lot. Yeah, I mean, I spent the majority of my time drinking before I became, a Christian. I drank heavily when I had time off, when I was on liberty, and I drank, and then I chased girls, looking for a girl to date or more.
And is some of that because there's just not a lot of other things to do, or is that just sort of primal human nature that is given an opportunity to run rampant? What did you see as the reasons that people were kind of doing that so much?
Culturally, I think, the Navy has a culture of drinking heavily. The military in general, I would say, has a culture of drinking heavily. So, but, I think it's just in the culture of being young as well. You go to college and you can do the same thing.
Oh, I did the same thing in college too,
Yeah, so I think it's just a cultural thing, American culture, where you just get, that's what you do on your time off.
And sometimes young men don't make the best decisions.
Right.
And speaking of better decisions, we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, Doug will have the next set of questions. We'll get back to our guest in just a moment, but
do you have a story to tell?
Would you, yes you, like to be a guest on the third chair?
Send us an email and tell us about yourself and your story.
And please follow us on social media.
Now back to the episode. So Jeremy, when you were young, did you just have an idyllic childhood where nothing bad ever happened, or did you have something tragic happen in your young life?
Yeah, I think, I would say that I had a regular, standard 80s childhood. And what I mean by that is, my parents divorced when I was 6, and I feel like a lot of kids in the 80s, can relate to that. It was like a divorced generation, it seems like, where a lot of kids grew up in homes where one of their parents wasn't around. And so that was probably the most tragic thing that happened to me as a kid is my parents' divorce at the age of 6. I don't remember much of it. Actually, I don't remember it at all.
Oh, you don't remember the divorce?
I don't remember the divorce really at all, how I responded. But I do know that there was some anger in my life, and I took a lot of that anger out on my younger brother. and I wasn't very nice to him growing up.
So did you have older brothers?
Nope. Just one younger brother, biological. You know, my dad remarried 6 months after the divorce, and the lady he remarried, my stepmother, she had 2 older daughters that were 10 to 15 years older than me. That might be a little bit too much, but at least 10 years. And then she also had a son who was 2 years older than me. Ironically enough, he has the same birthday as me. Like, we were born on the same day.
That
2 years apart.
Difficult for you.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting thing is his grandfather also has the same birthday, and my aunt, my biological aunt, has the same day. So, like, 4 people in this family all have birthdays on November 9th. It's easy to understand, though, when you think about 9 months before November 9th is February, though. No, I'm thinking February. I'm thinking Valentine's Day, right? You know, it's like perfectly 9 months planned out.
See, mine was because of the cold. They grew North Dakota, and
the cold too. That's right.
It was January because we have a lot of relatives born in October.
Right. Well, you know, I grew up in South Dakota, so not much different. You know,
it's a
little bit warmer.
Yeah, that's why it's February or so.
But you still get those Canadian Arctic winds that just
you go right through.
Apparently, they don't practice birth control in the Dakotas. But anyways,
not the good Catholics where I came from. So your little brother, was he born was he your half brother?
Nope, he's my full brother.
Full brother.
2 years,
but
2 years,
but you
2 years
just
and a
took it
couple
on
months.
him because he was there.
Took him out. Yeah, he was 4, you know, and I had power over him, right? We hurt those who we have, you know, control or power over. You know, I didn't have much power over him as a 6-year-old, but I was older, right? And so you understand the world a little bit easier, and you can hurt people. And so I didn't hurt him physically, but I called him names, and you know, it's something that I regret to this day because I don't know how that's affected him, you know, long term in his psyche. We're perfectly good now.
That's good.
Yeah, but we don't talk very much on the phone, and I don't know if that's normal or not. You know, I mean, I know some people are closer to their relatives. Like me and my brother, we don't have any bad blood between us. It's just we don't talk a lot, you know? So, I don't know. Is that normal?
very common.
I always picked on my brother. He was a year and a half younger than me, just because he was there.
Yeah.
I mean, my parents were, they stayed married a generation earlier.
Right. And I mean, I know that you have those sibling dynamics no matter what. You know, I have 4 kids now, and you know, I see that they, you know, pick on each other too.
Oh yeah.
But
and drive each other crazy. It's practice for marriage.
But they don't pick on your wife because they learn pretty fast. That's a mistake.
You can push mom so far, and then you better hide. Did this affect your relationship with God? Did you have a relationship with God at that time?
Yeah, I don't know if that I did have a relationship with God in a sense. You know, like I grew up attending a Lutheran church in my hometown. Was baptized, 30 days old infant, and we attended pretty religiously every Sunday up until my parents' divorce at 6. After that, we stopped going to church. You know, we couldn't. My mom had to start working multiple jobs, and you know, it was a lot to raise 2 kids alone by herself, and to meet all the bill requirements, and you know, like to put food on the table and everything. So, you know, we stopped going to church at that time. So I would say, yeah, it had a detrimental effect on my relationship with God because we stopped going to church. Mm-hmm. Did I have a knowable relationship with God though at that time? Like, yeah, it's hard to say. You know, like we didn't pray, we didn't read the Bible, we didn't do things like that in our home necessarily, but we did at church. You know, I got to experience some of that. I learned from an early age that Jesus loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. You know, we sang songs like that. So yeah, the roots were there.
How was your brother able to take care of both of you working different jobs? Was there somebody else helping?
Yeah, we had a lady across the street who she paid to babysit. Her name was Kathy. And she would often watch us. when I was young too, we had my mom's sister, my aunt, moved in with us too. Shortly after that, or maybe it was right before that. I don't remember when that happened. But my aunt and my two cousins, one's the same age as me and one a little bit younger, they moved in and they lived with us for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So from like 6 until 10, they lived in the same house. And so in a lot of ways, these are like sisters to me. I mean, we're really close. And we'd often discussed, even the chance of my kids calling them, Aunt so-and-so and me Uncle so-and-so.
I think it happens in some families.
It does. Yeah. So, but just really close. So my aunt moved in because of own things happening in their life as well. The sisters bonded together to raise us 4 littles as best they could. And, we were in a 3-bedroom house, and me and my brother had a bedroom, my mom had a bedroom, and then my aunt and the 2 cousins, they shared a bedroom. And so it was a great experience, I would say. Yeah.
Now, did your dad stay in South Dakota?
Yeah, he stayed in South Dakota for a couple years, and then he moved down to Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa area for a couple years, and then he ultimately moved down to Gulfport, Mississippi, for like 15 years.
Oh.
And I would go down and see him in the summers. And part of the time that he was down here, he was a Schwann's man. You know what Schwann's ice cream is? The yellow trucks with the Schwann, and they got ice cream and frozen food and everything. Anyway, he did that for a lot of years. And I used to go to work with him during the summers. It was so much fun. We'd walk in door to door and meeting all of his customers and getting to type everything in his computer, and then pulling things out of the truck and getting all the free ice cream one could eat,
Oh, you got all the free ice cream?
Yeah. Yeah. Oops, I dropped it. Here you go, son.
Oh, that's how you got it.
Yeah.
A lot of dropsies.
Lots of dropsies, right? Damaged goods.
Did your brother come down with you?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, we spent a lot of time down there in the summer, and then we eventually moved down there between my 7th and 9th grade years. I lived with my dad for 2 years, and then my brother lived with him a couple more years beyond that. But I moved up back to South Dakota.
No. Was there any particular reason for that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I got maybe homesick from South Dakota. I was ready to move back, live with my mom. Missed South Dakota probably. Yeah, I don't remember the reasoning, and I don't know the reasoning in why my brother stayed.
Did you have a grudge at the time against your dad because of the divorce, or
no,
or hold it, or you just didn't remember enough to?
Yeah, no grudge, and my dad worked a lot of hours too, so he'd be gone from like 6 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, so I didn't get to see him a lot, and so that was one of the reasons that I moved down there, was to be with him, but he was just working so much, and so I decided to move back with my mother. But I don't really remember the reasoning why.
Did you have any problems with drinking alcohol all the time and partying
when I lived there, or at any time in my childhood?
Any time in your childhood?
Yeah. So when I was down in Mississippi, I started hanging out with a guy who, we became really good friends. His name was Kenny. And we hung out with some other kids that on the block, that were just. They were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, like drinking and smoking and partying and stuff like that. So, I tried some of that, especially drinking and smoking. That's where I started smoking cigarettes. That's where I started drinking. That's where I went to church with this guy and had my first kiss with a girl, like, French kiss and underneath the ping pong table in the church.
Wow.
youth room, and thought it was the most disgusting thing ever, but
Well, if you smoked at the time, she may have thought the same thing.
Probably, yeah,
Did she
probably.
smoke?
She did not. No, she did not at that time. But yeah, I can remember going to like the Winn-Dixie down there and like looking for half-smoked cigarettes out of the ashtrays, and it's so disgusting.
Oh.
And stealing packs of Marlboro 100s from my dad. He used to put them in a freezer, so we'd pull one out from the back and set the other one up in front, and like. He never knew.
Well, so you knew his system. So
I knew his system. That's right.
It's a good thing. You don't have to study the.
Yeah, but that's where I started doing all of that because he wasn't around, and I could do a lot. Like there just wasn't a lot of oversight.
And there was nothing else to do.
There was
Hang
nothing
around
else
the
to do.
neighborhood.
Hang around the neighborhood with the kids that
drank and smoked.
Well, on that uplifting thought, we're going to go to a break and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Peter Grigg on the set of The Third Chair. Our company, 2 Men and a Duck Entertainment, are excited about supporting Quantum Leap Recovery, an audio podcast that talks about all issues about drug and alcohol recovery. So watch for it and listen to it, and it'll be a great time of learning, and hopefully it'll help people that are struggling with these issues have a healthier life. Thank you very much. And welcome back. We're here with Jeremy Spain, and we're going to pick up some questions about the time that he was in the Navy. Now, Jeremy, you are a little older now than when you're in the Navy. You now have 4 kids and have successfully been involved in helping a lot of people, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. And I asked you, what kinds of things do you wish you did in the Navy, looking back, that you didn't do? And you told me a few things. One of them was drink less. Another one was seek mentors. And the third, you said invest in friends. As you had time to percolate on this question, do you still feel the same way? Is that some of the things you wish you had done?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I was in the Navy from age of 20 to 29, so I spent pretty much the majority of my 20s, formative years in early adulthood and into, just adulthood, living for myself for a lot of that, not all of it, for a lot of that. From the age of 20, I should say, to 26. And so, like when I was overseas or when I was on the ship, like all I did was spend my money on drinking booze and looking for girls and partying. What do I have to show from that period in my life, that time?
Perhaps wisdom that you can share with others.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you're right. Had you had a mentor then, you probably would have been an admiral now.
Seaman admiral, I could have applied to that position. But I value that thing.
Yeah.
So drinking less, seeking mentors who could pour into me, invest in me, help me understand, how I can become successful just as a human being. Not necessarily in the military, but in the military, if I would have stayed there. My life would be so much different had I sought out those men or women who could really pour into me from their wisdom and knowledge, instead of it for myself. And I lament that, that I don't have those connections. Because when I see other successful people in life, they look back and they say, I've had mentors that have helped me get to where I am today. And when I look back at my life, I see mentors, but in that 6-year time gap, I was living for myself.
Sure.
And so investing in friends too, it hasn't been, since that time, like I've developed some good friendships, and it seems like every time we move, because we're a very transient family, we move a lot. So we don't really establish long-term friendships. We establish good connections with the people when we're with them, but then you move on. You move out of state. And it's hard to really make those connections. But, in the years between 20 and 26, I don't have a whole lot of good connections.
Sure. And around that time, I think if I understood your history right, you were still in the San Diego area when you decided to, for whatever reason, you ran into somebody who encouraged you to go to church or check out a church, where eventually you met someone very special. What happened with all that?
Yeah, so it wasn't that I ran into someone that encouraged me to go to church. It wasn't that someone told me anything at all. Someone, here now, like flesh and blood like us. It was God. I felt like I heard God tell me, not in an audible voice sort of way, but just in my spirit, tell me to go to church. And he would stick people in my life who would begin loving me as he loved me, as he loves me. And so I said, okay, Lord, let's do this. And so I just kind of grabbed a phone book when we still had such things as phone books. I think some places may have them now, but like they're prehistoric these days with the iPhone and all of that. But grabbed a phone book, started going to a church, and I saw people turning into this church that I had no clue anything about, any knowledge of it whatsoever. And so I turned into that church instead of going to the church that I had picked out of the phone book, and instantly connected with a young guy my age, and he started showing me around. He showed me he introduced me to some men who then began really latched on to me, older men, 50s and maybe 40s, so about 20 to 30 years older than me, and really began investing into my life, like those mentors that I really desperately wanted in that time, and just loved me as God himself. But later that night, when I met that young man, he said, why don't you come along to the young adult group that we have meeting tonight on Sunday? And I said, okay, yeah, let's go. And so that night I went to this young adult group, and I met two women there. There was a lot of people there, but I met two women specifically. One is now my wife, and I met her sister. And so from that moment, when I hit a low place in my life where I didn't love myself. Nobody else really loved me in the current context that I was in. Of course, family loves me, but the people that I spent the majority of my time with at work, I didn't have friends. And those people at work didn't love me. They didn't accept me. They didn't invest in me because I was just concerned about myself, right?
Sure.
So I felt like God spoke powerfully into my life, saying, I want to love you, and this is what you need to do for my love to become a thing in your life.
I always find it fascinating in the church world how it appears that God is kind of chasing after us, and things happen that we wouldn't necessarily plan but seem to work out pretty good for us. Would you say there is somewhat of an experience like that where it was sort of God initiating the chase?
God initiating the chase, yeah. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I've always believed in God, of course, but yeah, it was his pursuit of me, that endless pursuit, always seeking me out, even when I chose not to follow him. He didn't let that stop him from pursuing me again. I like that song. I don't know who sings it, but it just talks about the reckless love of God, where his love is reckless, and he chases us down through our sin and darkness and loneliness and isolation to offer us his love.
Yeah, if it wasn't copyrighted, I think I'd have Doug sing it for us.
Oh yes, you want to hear me sing? There'll be 10,000 viewers turning us off.
Now,
10,000 reasons, but the wrong reasons.
Now, I understand that at that time too, even though sort of these good things were happening to you, you were still probably drinking more than you should have at the time. Is that, or was even that beginning to change?
Yeah, that was beginning to change. I mean, February 2006 is when I started going to church again. That's when I felt the call of God in my life. And from that moment, I continued to drink and smoke for probably about 5 months as God continued to work on my life, as I continued to embrace his love more fully through teaching, going to church on Sundays, through the different teachings I heard, the preaching, through these men, through my connection with Warren. But really the last time that, I gave it all up was in July of that year. And I could remember, partying one last time with my dad over the July 4th. And we partied so hard that we were hungover for 2 days. Yeah, that was the last time. And there's been a few times since where I've had a little bit too much to drink. Not in, getting drunk per se, but just hanging out with family. And then, I find, I've had one too many beers. And then, you make a mistake, but not like pursuing that out every day.
Sure.
And just here recently, I just felt like God was telling me about a year and a half ago, about a year and a month ago, he said, Jeremy, you really need to give up drinking, just totally, like not even just one is okay for you. Just because I had that life experience of wanting to drink, to feel the effects of alcohol, to have the
the buzz,
just the release of the stress, and like I somehow craved just that need to have it, even just the one.
Yeah,
became so just you not have a drink in 13 months.
13 months.
Very good.
Yeah,
congratulations.
That's one of the things I think that makes the Christian walk fascinating too. Is I don't hear you saying, "Oh, drinking is wrong for everybody," but I know for myself, as someone in recovery, long-term recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, that for me, drinking alcohol is always wrong. It's never okay. And that doesn't mean a friend can't have a drink. I'm not saying that, but I think there are times that when we, for whatever reasons, we come to the conclusion something is just not right for us.
What is it for you, Peter? 11 or 12 years?
12 years, January the 9th.
I was just listening to a podcast on the way over here, and it was talking about the wedding feast of Cana with Jesus, and how the first sign in the book of John is him turning water into wine. And the reason for that was because God wants us to celebrate this marriage between, the bride of Christ and himself. And in that celebration, wine is essential. There's good things that come out of drinking. It lightens the heart. It brings some joy to us as well. So there's good things in that when it's done responsibly.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not saying that there isn't a place for that. It's okay. I just know for me, it's not at this time of my life.
Yeah, me too.
Probably never.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we're going to take another break, and when we return, we will continue the Inquisition of Jeremy Spade. Hi, it's Peter from the set of The Third Chair. I just want to put in a good word for my good friend and owner of 9 Round Kickboxing in Colorado Springs, Melissa Lance. Her studios provide a phenomenal workout in 30 minutes. I know I've benefited from it over the last 2 years. I've lost over 30 pounds and really appreciate the encouragement, the excitement, the expertise of the trainers. It's a great workout. I encourage you to check it out. That's 9 Round Kickboxing in Colorado Springs.
Enough about Navy life. So what did you do after Navy? I heard you had a chance to go to Italy.
Yeah, actually, that was with the Navy still, though.
Oh, it was with the Navy?
Yeah, so it was like right after me and Lauren got married. We were well, before that, actually, she was in Romania for a year she was on the mission field for a year, and I had asked her, like, hypothetically speaking, if we got married, where would you want to go? And one of the places that I could have put in for was Italy. And one of the places that I could put in for was Nebraska. And so I asked her, like, where would you want to go, Italy or Nebraska? Of course, we wanted to go to Italy, but my family being in South Dakota was a little bit closer. I'd already been gone for six years away from them. So we decided to actually move to Omaha, Nebraska. Great place. We still love it to this day, but we missed the opportunity to go to Italy and live in Italy for a few years. Now, there was no guarantee, that the Navy would have sent us there anyway, because, the demands of the Navy trump any kind of personal request anyway. So
right.
They could have said, no, you're still going to Nebraska, if we had even put in for Italy. But
I spent a little time in Omaha, and it's a nice city.
It is nice, yeah.
No Italy, but it's a nice city.
I spent a little time in Italy. That's a nice country.
Oh, yes, the food is great.
The food is great. But, I noticed that all the buildings seem to tip.
It's only one. And then you take the picture of you trying to hold it up.
Yeah.
So you spent your end of your Navy in Nebraska, and then you're getting out of the Navy, and what did you decide to do?
Yeah, so I got out of the Navy. I tried staying in the Navy. I'd spent 9 years in. I was just tired of being an MA. I wanted to do something else with my life, my career. So I had requested, can I transfer to intelligence, doing something that's a little bit more involved than just standing on a gate or sitting on a flight line, and they said no. And I said, okay, see you later. And, in 2006, I started attending Liberty University online, and I was finishing up my degree through them, just a bachelor's in science and religion, and really didn't have any really idea on what I was going to do or what I wanted to be. But I know I didn't want to be an MA anymore, a Master at Arms. And so I said, all right, I'm going to get out. And we moved back in with my parents, my mom and stepdad, for about 6 months, and tried to finish up my degree. And we had to eventually get our own apartment, just because it was kind of tense in that living situation. So
moving back in with your parents is not easy.
Not easy, that's right. So we decided to move out, and spent a year and a half there in Sioux Falls. Again, just finishing up my degree, and then I applied.
What was your degree in?
Yeah, so it was the Bachelor's in Science and Religion from Liberty.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty much like a pre-theology degree, or it is a theology degree. It's a Bible degree. It's not like I studied various different types of religions. It was really just studying the Bible, studying Christianity, and it's kind of like most doctors. In order to become a doctor, you got to have like a pre-med degree for an undergrad, right? So it goes through all this stuff that you need for things that will make you successful in your medical school. Well, this was a similar type of degree for seminary. It prepares one to go to seminary. And so I applied for seminary then. First, I applied to Dallas Theological Seminary, which is a very prestigious school, and they turned me down because I didn't have enough ministry experience. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. I explained that I had been in the military up until this time, and, working every other weekend, and my shift always changing. I couldn't volunteer as much as I would have liked. In retrospect, I probably could have volunteered. I just didn't.
Probably a little more than what
I did, right?
Yeah.
So they wanted me to get a little bit more experience under my belt before they would say yes. And so I said, okay. I applied to a different school, Bethel Seminary, out in San Diego, which is attached to the Bethel Seminary and College in St. Paul. It's just a satellite campus out there. And they accepted me, and I got into their Master of Divinity program.
So you went back to San Diego.
So we went back to San Diego. And we lived with my in-laws for 4.5 years while we were in seminary. They didn't charge us rent. I had 4 years of the GI Bill that I could use, because I didn't use that for my undergrad. And so they paid for my school. They paid a living stipend. I mean, like the military, it was a really nice.
The military has some good benefits.
Good benefits.
People don't realize, if you take advantage of them. Not everybody in the military takes advantage.
Right,
of
yeah,
them.
a big chunk doesn't, which is very surprising. But I mean, I had all my grad school covered, and then some. We're talking probably like $100,000 with both the cost of the academics themselves plus the living stipend that they paid for.
Is this when you started having kids, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, we started having kids while we were in the Navy. So my firstborn was born then, and she was about 18 months when we got out. And then we had our second one. So my wife, Lauren, she had our second born in Sioux Falls. And then my two boys were born out in San Diego while we were in seminary. And my wife, Lauren, she attended seminary as well. She got she did, for a Master of Divinity, it's 90 credit hours. So it's a pretty extensive master's program.
Wow,
It's not just, a 36-hour, master's like a lot of them are.
Right.
But even a counseling degree is 60. So, it's pretty exhaustive. But she got a 20 credit certificate and really loved her time in seminary as well. But
So you have 4 children?
Mm-hmm.
Did they tell you in seminary, because it seems like a lot of ministers have 4 children. Do you know why that is?
I have no idea. None whatsoever.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that one of them takes care of me in my old age. And that's my. But I think I was going to say something else with that too.
So you're in seminary. The Army paid for it.
The Navy or the VA, really the VA. Yeah.
VA. I'm sorry. I'm so used. I worked for the Army, so I'm so used to saying the Army. So the VA paid for this, and you're down there, you're working, and did you have plans at this time of what you wanted to do after you graduated from seminary?
Still no plans, like we went to, I got my undergrad without really thinking it through, just like I love learning about God, the Bible, the church, theology, ministry. I mean, I just love soaking in all of that. And I like doing ministry too. I went to seminary just thinking, well, I have a 4-year degree. What can I have 4 years paid tuition. And I'm like, well, what program should I do? So I just picked the most exhaustive one, which was that Master's of Divinity. I could do it in 4 years. The government would pay for it all. And that's just the one I did because it was most exhaustive. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do, but it was while I was in seminary that I really started to hear this call of maybe pastoral ministry, because I took a class called it was the Introduction to Pastoral Care and Counseling. And I had heard about this idea from the ancient church fathers and the early church. They taught that a pastor is really like a physician of the soul, a doctor of the soul. And that really started to speak to me. Like, that's like, I want to do that. Like, I don't want to just be a manager of a program necessarily, but I want to help people find healing in their lives for their soul, which manifests in so many other ways, physically, emotionally, psychologically. Right. If their soul is all messed up, if their spirit, has things that are ailing it, then it's gonna come out in a lot of different ways. And so I was like, that is what I want to do. That's what I want to be. I want to be a physician of the soul.
Feel better about themselves
and just connect with God, really. Yeah. I mean, that connection with God, helping them apply the gospel in their lives and find the healing that the gospel provides to free them up from fear and anxiety and stress and idolatry and sin and all of these things that weigh us down.
So what a great mission in life.
Absolutely. A hard one.
A hard one.
Because you also got to do other things on top of that, right?
Right. No matter what.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to ask Jeremy, and we'll give him a moment to ponder this, how he decided to pursue the Anglican tradition of the church, where he also now serves as a deacon, and some of the implications of that when we get right back. We sure hope you're enjoying this episode of The Third Chair.
Would you like to be a sponsor for The Third Chair?
We would love to have you join us to keep the show going and also help your business. Send us an email about your product or company and let's talk.
And follow us on social media.
Now back to The Third Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. We're back. When we left off, Jeremy had told us about doing... Took you, 4 years to do a Master's of Divinity, 90 credits. That's pretty darn aggressive. I know.
Most people do it in 3.
Yeah, well,
he was paid to do it for 4 years. So
I
definitely prolonged it.
Yeah, I know the master's degree that I purchased only took 15 credits. I bought it from a university somewhere in the Caribbean. I'm not sure it's totally accredited, but let's not get into that. And for the feds watching, I'm only kidding. Yeah. So, at some point, perhaps during grad school, perhaps not, I'll ask you, you decided to pursue the Anglican tradition of the Christian church. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so up until that time, let's see, I already mentioned that I went to a Lutheran church as a young kid. After I left the Lutheran church, I intermittently went to church throughout my childhood, here and there, once or twice. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes that was either a Baptist church or a non-denominational church. Mm-hmm. since becoming, a Christian again in adulthood, I attended a Pentecostal church for about two years maybe. We went to a non-denominational church. We went to a First Baptist or an American Baptist church. Then we went to another non-denominational church. So my experiences in that early adulthood was really the Baptist non-denominational churches of that type of church. And so in my experience, becoming a new Christian and then growing in my Christian maturity as an adult, I just felt that there was something missing from that experience. I felt like there should be something more to this service, to the worship, to my experience here. It just seemed to lack something. Going to church, singing a few feel-good songs, uplift me and encourage me, hear a sermon and go home. Like I just felt like there should be something more to that. And so it was in seminary. I went to a Baptist seminary. Again, there wasn't a clear calling into ministry whatsoever. This was a Baptist seminary. It was very much open to other types and traditions of Christianity. My history professor, his name was Jim Smith, he used to say, well, what hat do you want me to wear? Do you want me to wear my Catholic hat? Because he also taught at a Catholic seminary or a university. Wow. Do you want me to wear my Presbyterian hat or, my Baptist hat? Whatever it might have been. Because as any good historian, he just had a lot of knowledge about the different traditions. So they were very much open to that, even though they were a Baptist, but they weren't Southern Baptists in that they were strict in their definition of what it meant to be a Baptist. So I really appreciated that. But I saw these guys walking around the seminary with funny collars, all black. I'm like, why do we have Catholic priests walking around here? Well, come to find out, they weren't Catholic; they were Anglican, and. In my second year of the seminary, I had an opening for an elective. And the year before, I took a class called Missional Spirituality, which looked at the missional movement and just the way that they experienced God in that movement. And so I was thinking, well, maybe I'll look at different ways in which people experience God. Because I really like that type of just how do people experience God, through different prayers or their traditions or their liturgies or whatever it might be. So they had a class. It was called Anglican Spirituality. I took this class and immediately I started, like, some of the things that I felt were missing, they started to answer. Like, it was as if the dots, on a, what do they call that? Like a dot to dot. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like the image became clearer. Like, I was like, oh, I think this is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm meant to be here. And the Anglican Spirituality. So they taught. We started learning about the deep, the traditions of the church and how they go back to the ancient church. The richness of the liturgy and the beauty of the liturgy and how it's really just the proclamation of the gospel, but in worshipful language, and the Spirit can work in that as well. And it was the aesthetics as well. Like, I loved, the albs and the colors of the stoles and the bells. And if we could do smells, the smells too. Although I
like the incense, but apparently it kicks off the asthma of too many people. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be down for a little incense.
That's right. That's right. So, but just all of that seemed to, and the way it flowed, the liturgy, how it brought us into the presence of God and then led us back out into the world, with the Eucharist being the high point of the liturgy, or equally high as the sermon and the reading of God's word, which I really valued, which it just wasn't about hearing God's word, but that we are receiving grace through the sacraments as well, both word and table. So there's a sacramentality too of the Anglican way that really spoke to my life and just to the life of the church that I really felt drawn to. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been drawn to Catholic spirituality. The way Catholics experience God always speaks to me. I love the beauty of Catholic churches, the stained glass windows, the smells, the bells, the robes, the candles, the colors. All of that draws our attention to something beyond ourselves, beyond just me, where I can worship God in beauty and holiness. I got some problems with Catholic theology. So that's why I'm not a Catholic deacon or a Catholic priest. But I often joke around with my wife. I'm like, I tell her, if I didn't marry you, I'd probably be a Catholic monk. I would be a monk somewhere because of the beauty of being able to worship in that kind of setting, day in and day out. Because I've been to some beautiful monasteries, Catholic monasteries, really, where it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I just would like to bring up 2 points for clarification. One is, I don't think you're saying that there's anything wrong with singing a few feel-good songs.
We need music, of course.
Yeah.
Well, they do it in the Anglican Church too.
Yeah, the Anglican Church, yes. And the second thing is there are people following Christ in probably all the denominations.
Absolutely.
And we, I think we have to figure out how to agree to disagree on some of the ways we look at theology.
So I was and that's a good point, Peter. I was really talking just from my own experience.
Yeah, I thought you made that point well, Jeremy. I just wanted to put that out on the record since we've hit a few controversial things like heavy drinking and and whatnot. Anyways, we're now going to turn our attention to some of your time in Colorado Springs.
Okay. Before we get to that too, I just wanted to can I elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. You absolutely can take as long as you want. You've got a minute and a half.
Okay. Well, one of the things that really stood out in the grad school experience, right, in seminary, was this going to in that Anglican Spirituality class. I had to take 4 Anglican classes, by the way. So I learned a lot about that. But in that first class, I was invited by my professor, Father David Monzingo was his name. Great guy, good friend, mentor. And he invited me to the consecration of a bishop. This was a 3.5 hour long service, a consecration of this bishop. And I went to this not knowing what it would be about, how I would experience it, but it spoke to my soul in a way that no other liturgy or no other worship service has. Even since, even within the Anglican Church since, and I've been to lots of different.
It's pretty profound
services, but just. The high point was the Veni Creator Spiritus, where they called down the Spirit, where they invoked the Spirit to come down and fill him for this ministry of bishop. And the chant that the congregation sang, and there was like 400 people here, and the beauty of the lady's voice, it brought me to tears. I wept in the midst of this service, and I just experienced God's presence there in a way that I hadn't before.
Wow.
And so I just fell in love with the Anglican Church. I fell in love with that liturgy, that really, just the beauty of it. And not every Anglican church speaks to me that way. I have been in some Anglican churches with the liturgy where it just seems stiff. And it's missing something. So I can't say it's just the liturgy.
No, perhaps the Spirit of God being there as well.
And so no matter what church you're in, you can experience God there.
Yeah, I agree totally.
And you can miss out on it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I just wanted to get that in there. So.
I've been in a few services where the Denver Broncos were playing, and it was an afternoon service, and the attention of the crowd was on their cell phone and the score, as opposed to the sermon.
It was a game to get into the Super Bowl. So.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, Jeremy, we're going to have a few questions about your time in Colorado Springs.
All right.
Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Grigg, a life and recovery coach with Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching. I've had the pleasure and privilege of helping people for over 25 years. I want to hear your story, support and encourage you while we partner together to help you reach your goals. I can help you. I am certain I can help you. I can be your guide, role model, resource person, and help you get results. What's my coaching frameworks? I'm an eclectic coach drawing from a variety of disciplines and frameworks with evidence-based proven methods. What would you like to work on? Some popular areas are goal setting and attainment, building and maintaining motivation, finding purpose, personal development, recovery from drug and alcohol addiction problems, health and wellness, life planning, athletic and creative artist performance enhancement, maybe something else. Just ask me. I would love to help you. You can find my services on Fiverr.com.
Okay, after all this schooling, how did you end up in Colorado Springs?
Yeah, so after school, so I was introduced to the Anglican way in school. I had to do an internship in seminary, and I did an internship at an Anglican church for my last year there. Following that, I did another internship at another Anglican church in Oceanside. And while I was interning there with some great people, it was a great church. They all actually gave extra just to bring me on as an intern and supported me in that year and a half. But I think it became more evident that during that time, it was just getting harder for that to happen and continue. And so the rector of my church there said, it may be helpful for you to find work elsewhere, and I don't think he was specifically asking me to leave the church, but just to find employment elsewhere to help with that. And but at that same exact time, it was like in October of 2017, I think it was, when it might have been September, somewhere right around that time frame. Ken Robertson, the vicar or the rector now, I guess, of International Anglican Church, he gave me a call and said, "Hey, there's this church out in Colorado Springs that's looking for," actually sent me an email, looking for a pastor. Here's the write-up on the church. Let me know if you're interested. And so I read it, and I was like, oh man, this church sounds great. I just fell in love with this idea of a church that considered themselves kind of like the island of misfit toys, mm-hmm. right? I love that idea because I've been drawn to, people on the margins, people like myself who just maybe don't fit into the regular, people who go to church. I don't know how to say that, but just,
the clean stereotype Christian.
Yeah. Maybe has grown up in church all their life, made good decisions all their life, never messed up one bit, blah, 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 right? Yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes in my own life, and I come from as you guys have heard tonight, just a past that, is different. So, I can relate more easily to those who come from similar past or who have made bad decisions in their lives as well. And so, but just this idea of this church really spoke to me. So I said to Ken, yeah, I want to put in my my resume and cover letter, and I did. And the name of the church was Crossover Church, and
never heard of it.
Never heard of it. I know you guys haven't heard of it. You guys just happen to be on the board of the church, but so I applied, and you guys invited me out here to interview and to preach, and we came out, and it was a small church. It was a small gathering, but boy, was it just we fell in love with the church. We fell in love with you guys. I mean, we just really loved you all, and I felt like my sermon still stunk, but we fell in love with the city of Colorado Springs, and just everything about it said, God was moving us in this direction. So, when you guys came back, or when Crossover came back and offered us this position, we said, absolutely yes, we want to come out here. We want to pastor this church. We want to do that. So Crossover brought us out here, this church, this small little church plant that had been planted by another great guy who just had to leave for certain reasons, but yeah.
What was the best thing about having your own church?
I think
besides us,
besides the great board you had.
Yeah,
Lord help him.
I think the best thing was just being your own boss, trying to daydream your own programs up, building it yourself, kind of being in charge of that process, not having your schedule tied to certain things. But, more than that, I think just being able to be with you all was probably the most important. To be present with the people, to love on them, to pastor them, to shepherd them, I think probably the most important is just to love on them and to be present. I think I enjoyed that most. And to do that full time. It was hard. I know it was hard doing some of the other things in having to run a church and, trying to come up with, trying to, evangelize or bring people into the church or to preach every week. Some of that stuff was hard, but the thing I enjoyed most was doing community life together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Being my own boss was also good, but let me restate that. Doing community life together, I think, was so much more important.
One.
Yeah.
And having the flexibility to do what you want to build a church.
To focus on those things that I feel drawn to versus, not having to do things that you just don't like necessarily.
Yeah. I think when you mentioned being your own boss, the thing I noticed that you enjoyed about that is really being able to set your own schedule rather than having to be somewhere at 9 in the morning and being there till 5. It was more, I could meet people I wanted to minister to at lunchtime or things like that.
Go grab a coffee.
Yeah.
Go do prayer walks.
Yes.
Go out to lunch with someone who you just want to be present with. I think it's not really about being your own boss. It's really getting to set your own schedule and just having that flexibility. I think is really, and that ties back into just being present with the people. So I think that would be it.
It was an enjoyable time.
It was short-lived, but very. The church, as you guys know, only lasted about 11 months, and I know this ties in with your next question, so I'll let you ask it so everyone can hear. But
about the worst thing? What was the worst thing about having your own church?
I think the worst thing was just my expectations of who I should be, who I should have been, what I needed to be like. Like, I had these expectations, high expectations of how my sermon should be, of how many people we should have in the church, of what our worship services should look like, of how we should be growing, when we should be growing, how easy preaching should be. Just these high expectations. Those expectations just were a heavy burden that really crushed me, I feel like. Kept me from living out of that place with freedom in Christ, enjoying just the experience, to being present with y'all. Like the preaching expectations really were heavy upon me, and the lack of growth was hard too. Like trying to keep us going, and we grew. I think that 1 year, we added 4 people, 10 people if you count me and my family, which was like 120% of growth in that first year. Any church would love to have that.
Right.
So that was great, but we also lost some people in that time frame, and coming on right away, we lost a lot of people, and I think that was very hard too. It was I know it was harder on you all, more so than me, because I didn't know these people. They had left either shortly after I got there or right before I got there. So there was a lot of things that were hard about that, but I'm so glad. A lot of
challenges with it.
I'm so glad that we still have this relationship and the friendships that we have here. And it's really good seeing you, the both Dougs here, because it's been a long time since I've seen you guys, more so than Peter. I do hang out with Peter, but we just go to the same church, so it's easier to connect.
Well, I enjoyed your sermons, though. Yeah. I think you're kind of hard on yourself.
That expectation, right?
Yeah. I guess sometimes you're your own hardest critic, and sometimes you look back and I look back and say, oh, I should have done this. sometime 20 years ago. Like, if I had done this, it would have been a lot better. Like, I can't leave it alone.
Well, and the numbers on church plants aren't really good. A lot of church plants fail, and we all want to take responsibility where there is responsibility, but there's a lot of reasons that church plants don't make it. I don't think it ever falls on one person.
I really don't take the responsibility of crossover folding in that sense.
Good.
Yeah,
you should.
It's more of just the internal stuff that I struggled with, that I feel bad about, like that I didn't push through or, seek to apply the gospel to. That, I don't doubt that the Holy Spirit led us in the way that things did, that things happened. I don't doubt that was meant to be.
I think you're right.
But I do just wish that it was a growing opportunity, and maybe in hindsight, I wish I could.
I know the church helped me grow, so I was there about 4 years. And, I got a lot out of that church. So that way, some people call it a failure because we closed down, but I feel that church was a success because I think a lot of people got a lot out of that church.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Doug, that it's also about what we learn and how we grow from an experience. Not every experience is sort of a happy dancing experience, but that doesn't mean there isn't great potential for God using it and changing us for good. And making us deeper and stronger and better.
Something I've been thinking more about is just resiliency. Those failures and those not so successful experiences that we have, they teach us how to be more resilient if we are capable of having that growth mindset and learning from them and just seeing how we can bounce back. And, that's something that I've been learning here recently, is just how to become more resilient. I know that doesn't necessarily tie into your questions today.
No, but I think that's an important point. I think in the church, we did struggle as a church almost the entire time I was there, staying open, financially, enough people, but us as a church, we were resilient because we had a lot of people who believed in that. It was like, people probably were surprised how long it stayed together like that.
Well, we're going to hold that thought on resiliency. We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we will pick it back up.
Jeremy, speaking of resilient, I heard you were an actor and had to act with this rough director.
Ain't that true? No, I'm just joking. Yeah, a couple guys in this church that we attended, they have their own company. What do you call it? Two men and a duck. Not recording company, but what is it?
Movie production company.
Movie production company. Okay, so they had some really great YouTube videos with some slapstick type comedy, and one of the videos is called Day of the Dove, and so they invited me and my family to be part of this production, and so I think we were in season 2 or season two. Yeah, so our whole family got to do this as a family, and I was Purple Beard. Blackbeard's stupid brother, I think is the way they framed it. And, it was a lot of fun and being silly and having fun as just connecting as a church body as part of that, because mostly it was just us in the church too. So, but yeah, just getting to know you guys all through that experience was great. Being able to act was great. I can't say I'm that great of an actor, but, I do I did enjoy theater while I was in high school, and so I like that artistic side, definitely.
None of us were Olivier, but myself. But that was
Laurence Olivier.
Yeah. No, his third cousin, Hector Olivier.
Yeah. So I understand now. One of the responsibilities you have is as a hospice chaplain. And so I imagine that sometimes that can get a little tense. You have someone dying and you have families mourning and intense emotions. I could see how some things like acting and having a good laugh would help you personally even deal with situations like that. But, what have you learned about helping people in that situation?
Yeah, so, one of the things that you bounce back from, your failures. You learn from them, and you ask God or yourself, like, what happened here, and how can I do better, or what are you maybe inviting me into? So I'm gonna get to your question, but in a roundabout way. But one of the things that I started asking myself after Crossover closed is, what are some of the things that I still feel God calling me to? And that was just walking with people in the difficult parts of their life and pastoring them through that, shepherding, loving on them, really just loving on them, and being present. It was this ministry of presence. And so as I started looking more at chaplaincy in that role, I really felt like maybe God was inviting me to explore that more. And so I did apply to a hospice chaplain position. It was after I spent some time in a relationship, or as a relationship manager for an in-home care company here in town. We didn't get much into that too, and that's a whole nother story in and of itself. But I did apply for a PRN or part-time on-call hospice chaplain position because I do want to be with people in those last stages of life. That's sacred time, and we're all born into this world and we're all going to die out of this world. And, helping people in that space to do that well is important. I read a book recently, actually it was probably about a year ago, but it talked about midwifery of the soul, or being a doula, someone who helps babies birthed into life. Chaplains are kind of like that, helping people die well. And oftentimes I don't get to do that with the person because as an on-call chaplain, I'm usually called out after they've died. I don't get to help them process through the things that they're holding on to, the hurts, the shame, the guilt, sin, or things that they've been hurt by, or things that they've hurt others through that they're holding on to, that they need to process through in order to die peacefully, to die a good death, we would say. Because when you hold on to those things, it prevents you from really dying well. You're more agitated. You're more, you worry. You're anxious. You're not at peace. And so as a chaplain, they come along and they help those people process through those in their timing, in their way, if they invite us into that space. But really, I think the thing that I enjoy the most is just that ministry of presence, coming and being with those individuals who are very close to death, or if not, have already died, and their families, providing a little bit of ritual for them, a little bit of closure, praying, and just being present, loving on them and saying it's okay. Saying you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and I think it's remarkable to be able to say, I, as a human being, am willing to be that chaplain and joyfully go to do this difficult task.
Right.
Because for some people hearing you say that, it's like, oh my God, I wouldn't know what to say. I'd totally freak out. It would be so hard. Send someone else, Lord. Don't send me.
And it is hard. And I feel within my own soul that anxiety or that fear of like, what am I going to say? And that's why chaplains go through clinical pastoral education, where they get to process a lot of that own anxiety, because it ultimately ends up preventing the chaplain from pastoring. And so that's still some training that I need to do. That's still inner work that I need to do to become a good chaplain. But I still have those fears. I still have those thoughts. And
But I also see an excitement that, hey, God, you're calling me to do this, and I'm willing to go. And, and for that, I commend you. Now, in another area that's similar, I understand you're applying to be an Army chaplain. Now, the Navy people may say, oh, this is heresy, what are you doing? But, again, going to work with another group of people under duress, maybe a little different. Do you have thoughts about, what made you want to do that?
Yeah, so I feel called to join the Army as a chaplain, and the Army specifically because their ministry model, from what I've heard, is really about coming alongside these soldiers, our warriors, and supporting them as best as we can, both spiritually and emotionally, and helping them process through all of those things that get in the way that prevent them from, experiencing peace in their spirit. I mean, we're all spiritual beings, right? And I believe that. So, we're all going to react in certain ways in our spirit, and just be in that physician of the soul kind of mentality of going out there and being able to diagnose things that are afflicting people and holding them back and being a burden to them that prevent them from being resilient, that prevent them from being good soldiers, or whatever it might be. And just helping them support themselves, or helping support them, encouraging them, loving on them, finding a way that they can bounce back to become, a good soldier again, a good husband or a good wife, a good brother or sister, a good friend, to take the strains of that job and process them in a healthy way.
Do you have any Army chaplain role models? I mean, the only one I know of is Father Mulcahy from MASH, who I thought did a remarkable job. Is there any role models in particular when you think about what that would look like?
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of chaplain friends. I did, when I became a Christian in 2006, I did spend some time with the Navy chaplains, but I didn't really get to know them that well. So I can't really say that I have that they really had any influence, or anyone else really. One of the things that draws me into military chaplaincy, though, is just my time in the military. I can relate with the stresses and strains of military life, of deployment life, of, what it means to be away from your family for 6 months or a year. And while I don't have Army specific experience, that'll be a culture that I'll have to learn. It's this idea of just providing this ministry of presence, of being present with the troops, getting to know them, and supporting them as best I can.
Awesome. Well, on that thought, Jeremy, we're going to thank you very much for joining us tonight and joining us here on the third chair. We're very grateful you came in and shared these thoughts. Hopefully it has encouraged someone watching tonight. I don't know if someone wanted to contact you, is there a way that they could do that? Either sending you an email, or do you have contact with the public in that way?
Yeah, they could go ahead and contact me at jeremy@springsic.org. That would be a good email for them to connect with.
Excellent. And again, thank you very much. And that concludes our time tonight on the third chair.
This has been the third chair. Next week, our guest will be Joe Ruggiero. Want to be a guest? Want to sponsor our show? Send us an email. Please subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media.